If the Vikings chose not to do anything with the roster by the start of free agency, they will have around $70.5 million in cap to spend. Of course, they don't have to settle for just that. For we are about to embark on the journey, the time to shine for not just Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, but every NFL general manager, and that is expanding the cap through restructures, cuts, and in some cases, re-signings. And before we get to that, the Vikings announced the re-signing of Jalen Redmond. Good move. The main theme of the Vikings this offseason when it comes to roster construction is addressing the trenches on both sides of the ball, not just with starters, but also with depth, and not just bringing in outside names that you think can make an impact for this team, but also retaining talent that has made an impact for this team. As a rotational piece, Jalen Redmond can and I think would be a factor for a championship caliber squad. He certainly made an impact this year, and this move, this re-signing was announced just moments before the start of the end of season presser. So Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, hey man, hats off to you. You cannot question this man's work ethic. Well done. And as far as my reaction to the end of season presser on Kwesi's side, before I get to my personal preference on expanding the cap, went almost exactly as expected. When hit with the hard-hitting questions, Kwesi just danced. And that's really what all GMs do across the league in press conferences. They're not going to reveal their hand. So, for example, hey, JJ McCarthy, Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones. I love that we have options at the quarterback position. They are not going to give away what their plans are for any position going into the following season, let alone the quarterback position. But he did bring up something that I think was noteworthy, and that is the current status of JJ McCarthy, that he is training and on the field, which is a really good sign because I remember that footage that was circulating online of McCarthy on the sidelines during one of the Vikings' most recent games, that he looked a bit skinny and frail. Hey, man, he might need a sandwich or two. But you got to remember something here, folks. Whenever anyone, certainly a professional athlete, undergoes a major operation, in the case of JJ McCarthy, knee surgery, all of the training that you are used to doing before your injury, as far as building yourself up athletically and getting your muscle mass and cardio training in to get better and better, and the cliche of 1% better today than I was yesterday. Once you have a major operation, that training goes by the wayside. You have to scale that back times a million because it's no longer training. The focus has to be on rehabbing. And when you're rehabbing and not training as much as you were before, prior to the injury, all that mass and athleticism and body frame, the best bodybuilders in the world will tell you, hey, no matter how bulky that it is that you get, no matter how great of a physique that you have, inactivity or scaling down dramatically on your activity for about 2 weeks, you're going to lose everything. So him being back on the field, throwing and training, as Kwesi pointed out today, is great news. That shows that for all the doubt that, hey, I don't know if he's going to be ready for the start of training camp, at least this gives you hope to think otherwise. As far as KOC's presser end of season press conference, when presented with the hard-hitting questions, KOC, you know what he did? Hey, he danced. And that's okay. Because quite honestly, with any press conference, post-game or end of season, I expect nothing. But I'm like, all right, let me go ahead and check out and see if they're going to say anything of note. Hey, they did this time. Kwesi, JJ McCarthy, he's on the field, training, and throwing. Anything else? No, that's it. Oh, okay. So I don't blame KOC for that. But with both the GM and the head coach going into the final year of their contracts, there's much speculation more on the side of KOC, or as far as the speculation towards KOC that, hey, you know what, there might be some tension there, according to Mike Florio, which you got to take anything Mike Florio says with a grain of salt, or in the case of Jay Glazer reporting that teams are going to try and trade for Kevin O'Connell going into the final year of his contract. I think this is ultimately a nothing burger. They are going to get their extensions because no one's a perfect product. And in the case of Kwesi and KOC, a 4-year contract, 3 years in, they're going to get it this offseason. But when going for a contract extension, or at least approaching the candidates with a contract extension, you at least want to see something that suggests that, all right, what we've seen over the past 3 years, the progression there, no matter how big or small, it's enough to suggest that more is on the horizon. In the case of Kwesi, 2022, that draft, we don't need to talk about it again. Since that time, he has gotten incrementally better at drafting, certainly needs to get much better at drafting, but last year's free agency, the signings that he made, especially on the defensive side of the ball, Aaron Jones, he was okay, but the run game certainly improved, and the trading, Darisaw goes down, you trade for Cam Robinson, who is more than serviceable. There's enough there to suggest, all right, he's getting better. He's learning as he goes. And for the case of KOC, the head coach, when your starting quarterback didn't go down, when you had your starting quarterback for the entire season, you win double-digit games. Okay, and that's 2 out of 3 years. So the only thing we need to see now is, can you get over the hump when it comes to the postseason? Can you win playoff games? I think that's worth exploring, obviously. So, of course, they are going to both get extensions this offseason. Now then, expanding the cap. Right now, a little over $70 million to spend. As far as restructures are concerned, you got to be really careful with those because, all right, yeah, let's push all the money down the road. And for the short term, the now, it's going to be great. We can get 120 some odd million dollars to spend. And that sounds great, but eventually that money rears its ugly head. When it comes to restructures, my philosophy is money that you're going to push down the road, let it be for a player that you feel confident, or dare I say that you know you're going to sign to another extension. For me, the one restructure I would do this offseason is Brian ONeal. And objectively speaking, this year, I would say the back half of the season, maybe not the whole back half, but certainly a majority of the back half of the season, kind of struggled, but I'm going to chalk it up to, hey, it's a one-off. He'll be fine. He's one of the better offensive tackles in the league. Nothing to worry about. But that's all that I would do. And according to Over the Cap, a simple restructure for ONeal, you're going to save a little over $8 million. Now going to cuts. I've got 3 guys, all on the offensive line, by the way. 2 starters and 1 depth piece. And I understand offensive line is super important, but these 3 guys, we don't need to see anything else. The first being Garrett Bradbury. For the love, can we finally be done with this guy? I am personally sick and tired. I don't have the bandwidth, the energy anymore to talk about how bad Bradbury is. Everybody knows how bad Garrett Bradbury is. No more. You save $3.6 million in cap, plus him being on the interior offensive line is one of the positions that you need to upgrade. It is time that we move on from him finally. Let it be done. The story has been written. Number two, and I would be willing to hear a possible pay cut for this guy so that we can downgrade him from a starter to a depth piece. Blake Brandle. They signed him to his contract last year for him to be a starter and started the season off 2024 red hot. Hey, this could be your left guard of the future. And the fall off since that time has been crazy. I don't know if I've seen anything like it, but I've seen enough to know that, all right, we don't need to run this back a second time around. So if he doesn't agree to a pay cut, then just cut him entirely. You end up adding $2.6 million in cap. And lastly, I don't think there's quite honestly, I don't think there's a debate to be had with any of these guys, but certainly this guy, Ed Ingram, one of the last pieces of the 2022 draft class, lost his starting job. There's nothing else to see with this guy. You cut him $3.3 million in cap. So now you go from, with this model, restructuring Brian O'Neill, cut Bradbury, cut Blake Brandle, unless he's willing to accept a pay cut, and cut Ed Ingram. You go from $70.5 million in cap to spend to $88.4 million. Your thoughts? And if you want to get crazy with it, I don't even think this is crazy at all, but if you want to up the ante and add more players to possible restructures or cuts, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. We will see you next time.